SQL or operator. Or operator used to filter records based on more than one condition, where clause used with or operator. When we use and to combine two or more than two conditions, records satisfying all the specified conditions will be there in the result. Means in case of AND operator, there must be all conditions must satisfy the result, or all conditions must be true. But in case of OR operator, at least one condition from the conditions specified must be specified by any record to be in the result set. So in case of OR operator, there it is not necessary to mm, true all conditions. If there is only one or condition is true, then also result will get. When multiple conditions are joined using OR operator, all those rows will be fetched from the database which meets any of the given conditions. So OR operator syntax: select column name 2 from table name where condition 1 or condition 2 or maybe a number of conditions. Select star from, or there may be column names or all the records. So select star all the columns. Select star from table name where condition 1 or condition 2 and sorry, or there may be many or also. Now we will see our operator with example. For that, we have taken the same patient table. We have taken another database, but the table is same, which was used in the condition of AND operator. So here patient ID is then patient first name, then patient last name, patient disease ID, expenses, hospital ID. This is a table fields, and we execute the query. Now table is created successfully. So here we can check the table. Now we add the same records. So we have given IDs like uh, 1 for COVID, then 2 for cancer, and 3 for fever. So these two diseases we have taken. For we are making simple records, and we try to make as much simple as possible. So this is the first record. So this is the first record having field first name, then last name, then disease, then disease ID, then expenses, then hospital ID. Similar kind of records entered here. Now these are the 7 records. We execute the query. Now we can see 7 records are added. So we can see here 3, or if we see, we can see all the records are added successfully. Now we will see how OR operator works. Select star from patient where patient disease is equal to cancer. or hospital ID is equal to 3. It is a request for those who are watching this part or watching on this part of our operator. Mm, they must see the part of AND operator. So if they will see the video of AND operator, then it will be very easy for them, because we have referred same table and same records in the case of AND operator, and now we are checking the condition for OR operator. So please try to see the video about AND operator, so it will be very easy to understand this OR operator also. Here we can see select star from patient, where patient disease is cancer, or hospital ID. We have used OR operator here. So if we execute this, what is problem? Disease. Hmm, Patient disease. Hospital. Now we can see the result. Patient cancer. So cancer and hospital ID is equal to 3. If we see how our operator work. Now here we have given first condition, where patient disease. Select star from patient where patient disease is equal to cancer. Now, cancer, and there is patient disease cancer, and there are two records. So both the records you will get first, and then or hospital ID is equal to 3. And then or also the condition of or is also gets true. Then uh, hospital ID is equal to 3. So hospital ID 3 related all records will get. So here we can see hospital ID is equal to 3. But hospital ID 3 having, we can see there is only one record in case of hospital, and this that is also having cancer. So we get two records here. We get two records here. Roshi Kapoor cancer, then Sanjay Dutt cancer, and hospital ID is equal to 3. If we take the same, and here we change the hospital ID. So patient disease is cancer and hospital ID is 1. If we see here now, if we see here cancer, both the records, so two records of cancer comes here, then hospital ID is equal to 1. So this is the hospital ID and having 3 record, and this is the records of cancer. So this records the result Rishi Kapoor cancer, then hospital ID 1 Salman Khan fuel, and hospital ID 1 Arbaz Khan fuel, hospital ID 1 Sanjay Dutt having cancer, and but hospital ID is different, but cancer. So all records related to cancer and all records related to hospital ID both gets here. Now here we can see there is no hospital ID 6. If we take here hospital ID is equal to 6. Now there is no hospital ID 6. So this condition select star from patient where patient sorry where hospital ID select star from patient where hospital ID is equal to 6. This condition becomes false, and only the condition the select star from patient when patient disease is equal to cancer. The result of this condition gets here, and the another condition becomes false. So we in case of or and operator, if any one condition is false, then there is no result or get empty result. But here we in here one condition is false, but another condition is true. In that case, the result from this condition, which is true, will get here. Now here we can see that cancel the records to two records. Here we can get Rushika proofs together. Now if we take here dengue, there is no disease dengue in our table, and we give here 1 hospital ID 1 is present, but there is no result of dengue. Then this condition becomes false because there is no disease having name dengue. This condition we can still start from patient where patient disease is dengue. This becomes false, but select start from patient where hospital ID is 1. Then this result of this condition, which is true, it will get here hospital ID 1 and hospital ID 1 having 3 records. We can see here hospital ID 1 having 3 records, and all the 3 records we get here, although the condition one condition becomes false. If we give here dengue and here there is no hospital ID 6, both the conditions are false. In that case, we get the empty result. Now, if there is no any condition having true, then in that condition there is empty result. We can say that now both if both condition are in the case of or operator, both conditions not to be required true. In case of and operator, there must be necessary to get on both the conditions must be true. It is the condition in case of and operator, but here there is no condition such condition. Any one condition required to any one condition required true, and if both conditions true, then result from both conditions get. If both conditions are true, If one condition is required true and result from one condition get, and if both conditions true, then result from both conditions get. If both if both conditions are false, then on then only empty result get, like this. Now we will see example related to disease ID 3, which is fever. For that, select star from patient where disease ID is equal to 3 and expenses less than 50,000. Take star from patient. Sorry, here we use or operator. Now, if we see here, there is, if disease ID is equal to 3 fever and expenses less than 50,000, there is only one record. In case of AND operator, this one record we got, but here we can see disease ID is equal to 3. All the records for this condition, disease ID is 3. Salman Khan, Arbaz Khan, Ajay Devgan, disease ID is 3, and and the record disease ID is equal to 3 and expenses less than 50,000. Huh? This record contains 10,000, which is less than 50,000. So this get here, and this is ID is 3. Also, now also we can see there is only, this is the record 10,000 and 20,000. So both the records are below the 20,000. So another record which is below 20,000, below 50,000, that is 20,000, that also get, means first condition disease ID is equal to 3, all the records get, or expenses less than 50,000, all the records get. Disease ID 3 records, and though these two records having salary, sorry, having expenses less than 50,000. In case of AND condition, only one record get it, but here we can see four records get. If we see, now we can see here this is, now we can see here disease ID is equal to 3 and expenses greater than 50,000. So all the expenses get greater than 50,000, 70,000, 60,000, 65,000, and here we get the record which is less than 50,000, but here disease ID is 3. Here also we get 70,000, 90,000, 60,000, all the records having expenses greater than 50,000 get, and disease ID 3. Now, the records having disease ID 3, there are 3 records. These 3 records and all the records having expenses greater than 50,000 we get here. If in condition of AND operator we get only 2 records where 3, this Salman Khan and Nawaz Khan having disease ID 3 and expenses greater than 50,000. But here we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 records. It contains all the expenses greater than 50,000 or la- um, uh, greater than 50,000, and disease ID is equal to 3. This is record having less 10,000, expenses 10,000, which is less than 50,000, but in here disease ID consider all the records having disease ID 3 and all the records having expenses that are more than 50,000 we get here. We can use order by clause here, order by expenses descending. Now we can see here all the expenses and all the records having disease ID 3. Multiple or operator. Now, for time saving purpose, we see the examples in the where in the case of our AND operator, similar case we will see here. We have seen that select star from patient where disease ID is equal to 1 and expenses less than 50,000 and hospital ID is equal to 5. So select star from patient. So in the case here, all the conditions were checked. Disease ID 1, expenses less than 50,000 and hospital ID is equal to 5. Disease ID is equal to where Kanika Kapoor. Here we can see disease ID is equal to 1, expenses less than 50,000, expenses less than 50,000 and hospital ID is equal to 5. So this record, one record we get in the condition of AND operator. If we use here OR operator, or we get 4 records. Here disease ID is equal to 1. All the records having disease ID 1 and expenses less than 50,000. Expenses less than 50,000. Here disease ID is not matching, but expenses less than 50,000, 10,000. And hospital ID, all the records having hospital ID 5. We can see here on the records. If we see here disease ID 1, 3 records, and expenses less than 10, 50,000, 10,000, but here 20,000, but it is included in this is ID 1. So here one record get having expenses less than 10, 50,000, that is 10,000, and here two records, hospital ID 5. So in this way we get four records. In the case of AND operator, there is no hospital ID 6, so we get empty record. If we use here or operator, in that case we can see here the disease ID 1, all the records related to disease ID 1 get, and all the record less than 50,000. No, hospital ID is equal to 6. This condition becomes false, so there is no result for this condition, but result for these two conditions we get. In case of and operator, all the conditions must be true, but here even one condition is false, then there is no any the result is get for the conditions which are true. So if there is condition here, this is id is equal to id is equal to 10, we have not this is id 10. In that condition only expenses less than 50,000, these two are the expenses less than 50,000. One condition is there. But which if we change only 50,000, so expenses less than 50,000, and if we give here expenses larger than 1 lakh, then only the condition becomes false. So it will execute the result for the condition which is true when there are or many or operators. In case of another multiple and operators may be there. If one condition is false, then there will be empty result. But here we can see multiple and or operators may be there. Multiple or operators may be there. If one condition is false, then the result then then result of remaining true conditions get. If all conditions empty false, then only empty result get. So multiple or operators may be there. If one condition is false, then result of remaining true conditions get, and if all conditions false, then only empty result get. Or operator with AND operator. Here is the example. Select star from patient where disease ID is equal to 1 or disease ID is equal to 3 and expenses less than 50,000. If we execute here the query, we get the result here. Here is the result for records we get. What happens here? Here we can see that if there is OR operator and operator, in that case AND operator execute on the query with AND operator with execute conditions with AND operator execute first. So here we can see select star from patient ID where disease ID equal to 1 or disease ID is equal to 3 and expenses less than 50,000. So expenses disease ID is equal to 3 and expenses, this will execute first. Disease ID is equal to 3 and expenses less than 50,000. We get the result. This is so here we can see This is ID is equal to 1. No, sorry. This is ID is equal to 3 and expenses less than 50,000. So this is ID is equal to 3 and expenses less than 50,000, 10,000. This will execute first, and after that this will execute. Select start from function where this is ID is equal to 1 or this is ID is equal to 3 and expenses less than 50,000. So here we can see this where this is id is equal to 1 or this is id is equal to 3. So this is the result. This is id is equal to 1. All the records related to this is id 1 and or and after that first this query executed. After that this query will execute this part of the query. This is id is equal to 1. Now we can get here the result, remaining result. This is id is equal to 1. This is happen when we use or operator with and operator. If we give bracket here, then we get another result. Now in this case, this is the in this case you can see here. Now select start from patient where this is id is equal to 1 or this is id is equal to and expenses less than 50. So first it will consider this id is equal to 1 and expenses less than 50,000. So or this is id is equal to 3 and expenses less than 50,000. So we get the result like if this is id select star from patient where this is id is equal to 3 and expenses less than 50,000. So we get here this is id is equal to 3 and expenses less than 50,000, 10,000, and this is id is equal to 1. This is id is equal to 1 and expenses less than 50,000. Here this is id is equal to 1 and expenses less than 50,000. Like this we will get result. If we give or otherwise it will in previous it execute this query and after that this, but here we get now we can get the result proper result that this is id is equal to 1 and expenses less than 50,000. This is id is equal to 3 and expenses and condition this is executed after. First it will check this is id 1 and then and expenses, then this is id is 3 and expenses. If we give here, if we check here, now we will get a result. Select start from patient where this is id is equal to 1 and expenses greater than 50,000. This is or this is id or this is id is equal to 3 and expenses greater than 50,000. So here this is id is equal to this is id is equal to 3 and expenses greater than 50,000, 60,000, 65,000, and this is id is equal to 1 and expenses is equal to greater than 50,000. Way we get the result of or operator with and operator. So that's all about that's all about or operator. Thank you.